Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. And it's a webinar where we're going to discuss Lyme disease. I look forward to seeing the questions you have in store tonight, because as you know, that decides what we're going to talk about. So for those of you that are new, welcome here, and I'm glad to see you're here. For those of you that are coming back again, welcome back too. And I guess it means you're probably getting some value out of this. So I'm glad that I can help keep delivering that for you as well too. For those of you that are new, the people that have been here before know what I'm about ready to say. But for those of you that are new, there's a couple ways you can participate. First, you could read the questions as I post them on the screen. I do read them out loud too for the people that are participating in the recorded version. And then see what the responses that I give. With the answers I give, I always try to do some education about the topic. So I do a lot more than just answer the question. I try to explain Lyme disease and all its various components. In terms of the other way you can participate, and that is go bold, write a question. And the way you write a question is there's a chat box on the bottom right-hand side of your computer. You can write your question to me through that chat box. The only thing I ask is that you use shorter questions. Long questions really don't work out well in this format, okay? And if it gets too long, I won't be able to answer it. The second thing that I ask is that you only hit the enter key when you're ready to send the complete question to me. Do not use your enter key to create paragraphs, okay? So unfortunately, the way this platform works, you have to write a big, long, run-on paragraph, hopefully not too long, to send your question to me, okay? So just keep that in mind as you're doing it. The other thing I want everyone to know, we have a pretty good sized crowd signed up tonight. We have one of my larger audiences. But that doesn't mean everyone will show up, but at least we had a good sign up. The thing is, though, what it does probably mean is I will not get through all of the questions tonight. I'll go through as many as I possibly can. Okay. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and, one other thing. I am creating a recording of tonight's webinar. And I'll have it ready by tomorrow morning. When I have it edited and I've created a synopsis of it, I send out an email to you so that you are aware of that. You will be able to find, so look at your email somewhere probably around 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, Austin, Texas time, and you should see something from me on that. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and get started here. Hello, Sally. Let's see. Is it a good idea to do a parasite cleanse prior to treating Lyme? In general, no, I don't think so. Keep in mind, the only reason I suggest that people treat for parasites, and I would be talking intestinal parasites, is if they're having issues from those intestinal parasites, and that would be, and I mean intestinal issues. So, cramping, loose stools. Those kinds of things might suggest parasites, but keep in mind those things might suggest intestinal overgrowth to begin with as well too. In general, what I recommend for people that are having a lot of gassiness, bloating, sugar cravings, it would be to look at the possibility of having too many yeast and treat those, but those aren't parasites, okay? But unless there's a clear reason based on testing or so if you have a lot of GI symptoms and you treat for intestinal yeast and the GI symptoms remain, then there is the possibility of intestinal parasites. And at that point, you might want to do some stool testing to determine what they are, and then possibly pick an antiparasitic agent based on that. That's generally the way I go. I know there are some of my colleagues that think that there are parasites throughout the body that are causing problems. I disagree with that. I don't think the science supports that at all. And I don't think we generally need to get rid of parasites in our intestines because many parasites in our intestines help us. Not all parasites in our intestines are bad. Our gut microbiome, the things that live in our intestines, are made up of a lot of healthy stuff. So parasites, worms, bacteria, viruses. There are healthy organisms that live in our intestines that we don't want to disrupt. So I don't think it's a good idea just to randomly do a parasite cleanse. You might be disrupting the good parasites that are supposed to be there as well too. Okay. All right. Let me do a screenshot. I'll show you when I think it's appropriate to look for parasites and to treat them, and an approach you can use for that. I've written an article about that. So let me do a screen share here for you on that. So this is my Lyme information site, Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. If you look in my infection treatment plan section, oops, looks like hold on a minute, let me change how I'm logged in here. Go to the infection treatment plan section, and if you just scroll down here, you'll find the article I've written on parasites. It's right here. It says when and how to treat parasites in Lyme disease. Okay, so I walk through when to do it. And no, I don't think everyone needs a universal antiparasitic. Okay, all right. Thanks for the question. So I do need to clarify, the idea, people think all parasites are bad. Keep in mind, some parasites are good. So I don't advocate just randomly trying to parasite cleanse unless there's some reason to believe that you would have too many of the bad kind of parasites living in your intestines. Okay. All right. Hello, Margaret. See, how can you believe that tapeworms, for example, can be good for a person? I have seen pets go downhill badly with worms. God, I have to look at this. I'm not an expert on tapeworms, okay, but I know there are some experiments, I believe it's with tapeworms, where they're showing some ability to heal certain conditions. And I've kind of like stored that in my area of the brain. Well, that's interesting, but I can't tell you specifically for which conditions it is. Okay, so I can't elaborate more than that. All right. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. A question about anti-nuclear antibody or ANA titers. When I first got Lyme, they were 1 to 80, went to 1 to 2,560, remained at that level the last 7 years. Lab comments say seen with SLE, which is lupus, everyone, but line assay negative. Nothing I've tried brings it down. Initial ANA test in Vermont, now in Oz. I'm not sure what you mean by Oz. Perhaps labs vary. I feel like body is mounting autoimmune attack on multiple organs. Any thoughts on its relevance? If harmful, this high, this long, and how best to bring down? Background: got Lyme and likely Bartonella and Borrelia in Vermont 10 years ago. Initial test at 2 weeks was negative. Worst symptom day day one was bladder. Slept on bathroom floor for 2 months. Developed sudden extreme nocturia. Diagnosed with interstitial cystitis, but no treatment helped since they didn't know how to treat Lyme and co-infections. After in vitro fertilization, at 7-year mark, went into severe relapse with insomnia, night sweats, joint pain, GI issues, anxiety, etc. Then tested biogenics, treated times 6 months. Now have Hashimoto's with thyroid peroxidase of 1,000, antibodies with 1,000, TSH 3.8. Other immune issues, about to start treatment. Any recommendations? All right, so anti-nuclear antibody means that your immune system is making antibodies against your genetic material. All right, that's not supposed to happen. All right, now that is seen in some autoimmune illnesses, specific autoimmune illnesses like lupus, but there are other things that can trigger to be elevated too. And in fact, having an elevated anti-nuclear antibodies is not diagnostic of lupus. You need to have skin rashes, and also they need to break down if you have a rheumatologist would do further testing to see if you have other specific antibodies that are more specific for lupus. And you may have had that done, but usually with those kind of elevated levels, there would need to be some further studies done to break down the types of anti-nuclear antibodies you're having to determine if they might be consistent with lupus or not. Okay. Now, irregardless of whether you would meet the diagnostic criterion for lupus or not, clearly you've got an immune system issue going on, autoimmune. You have anti-nuclear antibodies. Okay. And so often, even if you have lupus, it could be Lyme triggered the lupus. All right. So the big thing that when somebody has autoimmune disorders that I like to do is, number one, treat the infections, all right? And briefly, from what you've listed here, interstitial cystitis often is seen in Bartonella. Night sweats, I believe you wrote, night sweats are often seen in Babesia. And ongoing anxiety is often seen in Bartonella. GI issues can be seen in Lyme or Bartonella. You've got a lot here that makes me wonder, and I need to ask you a lot more questions symptom-wise, but I wonder if you have all three of the big infections, basically. The three Bs, as we call them, okay? So anyhow, you would need to treat those, and by killing them, that part of treatment, that eventually should be able to downturn this autoimmune reaction, okay? The second thing that I like to do is when I have a situation like this, I like to put people on something called Low Dose Naltrexone, okay? So Low Dose Naltrexone, also called LDN for short, is something you can do to regulate the immune system so that it makes more of a type of cell called a T regulatory cell. And T regulatory cells are supposed to control how much you have of something called Th1 versus something called Th2. These are two types of immune reactions, okay? And it creates balance between those two, which can help turn down autoimmune disorders as well, too, all right? So low-dose naltrexone is something to consider. And I usually would start people at 1.5 milligrams one time a day. And if they're tolerating that, after 2 weeks, I would go up to 2 pills one time a day. And then in another 2 weeks, I would go up to 3 pills one time a day. It has been used successfully in fibromyalgia. I have used it successfully in Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I have used it in Sjogren's syndrome with good benefit. And anything that's autoimmune usually can make a difference. You have to give it at least a 6-month trial, though. It's not going to do it right away because this is modulating the immune system, all right? I'll show you in a minute an article I've written about low-dose naltrexone, okay? So those would be the big thing. Treat your infections, get on low-dose naltrexone, and I would get further differentiation on that ANA. A rheumatologist should be able to do further testing to see if you meet the technical criteria for lupus or one of the other autoimmune illnesses that would give that kind of an anti-nuclear antibody elevation. Okay, all right. So let me show you that low-dose naltrexone article here. Okay, so take a look in my online Lyme guide and look in the immune system chapter here. And this is my article on low-dose naltrexone, okay? All right. The other article, just so you know, the other article you might want to look at too, because of thyroid illness, is to look at how I use LDN in Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And so, let's see, I just got to type in thyroid here. So my article called "It's Tricky How to Diagnose and Treat Low Thyroid" does have a section on Hashimoto's in it as well too. Okay. All right. All right. Good luck to you. Hold on here a minute, everyone. All right, no more thing here. Okay. All right. I was just double checking to make sure you were all hearing and seeing me okay. No one's making negative comments, so I assume you are. All right. Hello, Glenna. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. My brother-in-law had a bad cat bite, which became severely infected. He was treated with an antibiotic, not sure what. The bite wound healed. Months later, he's having ear pressure and vision problems. Do you feel this could be Bartonella? If so, which IgG tests would be your recommended? And when you test for IgM and IgG, thank you. Um, it, so it is possible. It could be. Doesn't mean it is. I would want to know what other symptoms he's having too besides that. And obviously, I don't get to ask you a bunch of questions here. But if he has more than these symptoms that could suggest Bartonella, then definitely. But your Bartonella test through IDgenetix is probably the best way to screen for it. And the test I would do through there is called an immunoblot. And it's looking to see if the immune system is making antibodies against proteins found on Bartonella. What makes the IDgenetix test really good is they are looking to see if you have antibodies against 4 specific strains, and in addition against the species of Bartonella. And so we think there may be 15 specific strains that can give Bartonella problems, and a lot of that is neurologic problems like you're describing here. But IDgenetix is the only one that has a broad test that can detect the whole family. So let's say that you get a test done and the species comes back positive, but one of the 4 strains like Bartonella cantana or Bartonella henselae or Bartonella vinsoni that they test for are negative, but the species is positive, it means you've got one of those other 11 strains basically. But yeah, and I would actually test for both IgM and IgG antibodies. Now, many of you know IgM antibodies are what you first develop whenever you get sick with something. And then they are supposed to go away. And they're supposed to go away by around 6 weeks to 3 months. And so they should be gone. However, Borrelia, Lyme, and Bartonella have some evidence that this does not always happen. And in fact, we've got good evidence with Borrelia, not Bartonella, but Borrelia, that 50% of the time that people have chronic Lyme, they still continue making IgMs, even though they're not supposed to. All right. And it's not a false positive. It's probably real. Okay. And recently, as IDgenetix has been developing the immunoblot, Burrascano, who is one of the physicians that advises them, has reported that they're seeing positive IgMs when they do validity testing on people that have chronic Bartonella. And again, that shouldn't happen, but it does. I don't know why, but it does. So I would look for both, actually. I would go looking for both. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Or good luck to your brother-in-law, I should say. Hello, Shannon. Let's see. Hi, thank you for this webinar. You're welcome. My test came back positive for Bartonella, but both doctors said ignore and can't handle antibiotics. What you do recommend? It says I have 3 bands. I have no control over my bladder anymore. Do you believe in oregano oil or Argentin 23? Please help. I'm trying to figure out how to jump in here, Shannon. Just a second here. All right. So given, and again, I'm hampered here because I don't know all of your symptoms. I don't know your whole history. Okay. But if the test was positive for Bartonella and you're having a lot of bladder symptoms, that suggests possible Bartonella. The bladder symptoms do. I would feel better calling this Bartonella if I could actually see your test to see what was being called positive. And if you had a lot of other symptoms of Bartonella, all right? In a minute here, I'm going to do a screen share where you can read my article about what the symptoms of Bartonella are. But yeah, I mean, from what you've described here, I think that is reasonable to think you might have Bartonella, all right? Now, in terms of Argentin 23, that's colloidal silver, there is no evidence that it's useful against Bartonella. I would not do that. In terms of herbal medicines that have good activity against Bartonella, hold on here just a minute. Herbal medicines that have good activity against Bartonella include Japanese knotweed is one possibility. Hutania is another possibility. Sida acuta is another possibility. Cryptolepis is a possibility. And cinnamon, clove, and oregano oils are a possibility, okay? these days, what I like to do for my Bartonella treatments is to put people on a combination of Hootenea and Sida acuta, and I try to work them up to 30 drops twice a day on both of those. I also like to use that, have them take that along with capsules of something that has cinnamon, clove, and oregano oils in it. Okay. So cinnamon, clove, and oregano are very useful against treating both growing states of Bartonella, but also treating what are called hibernator or persister Bartonella. The Sida acuta and Hootenea are probably better at treating growing Bartonella. And when you treat Bartonella, you want to cover for both growing and the persister forms. Okay. You want to be able to cover for all of those. Okay. All right. And Argentum, we just have no science that shows that it works at all. All right. So I'm going to do a screen share here so you can look and see an example of that protocol so you know more about it. All right. And then I'll show you that how to diagnose Bartonella so you can look at what the symptoms are as well too. Okay. All right. Do that here. All right, so in terms of, I'm going to show you my Ross Lyme support protocol. And if you look here, this is quite a long piece. So you're going to find it under my Lyme protocol tab. And then if you, over here is this navigation menu and click on item 12 here, which is the Bartonella and Babesia co-infections, okay? And here I give you the option of how to do an all herbal option to treat Bartonella. All right. So read this through. It gives you the ins and outs of how to do that. So anyhow, you can, I'll show you where you can find these various herbal products here in just a minute as well too. Okay. All right. Then in terms of how do you diagnose Bartonella, take a look at my section here called how to diagnose and click on this, how to diagnose Bartonella and chronic Lyme disease. And in here, I talk about testing and which test I like best. But then also down here, I talk about the Bartonella symptoms, the things that you would want to have if you have Bartonella. Okay. All right. What those symptoms would look like. Okay. All right. So take a look at this article. And then finally, in terms of where you could find the herbs, where you could find the herbs that I just mentioned. So this is my supplement store, Marty Ross MD supplements. Anyone can order from here. This has the products that I used to use with my patients and when I was in practice in Seattle. It's available to anyone. I sell all products at the lowest amount the manufacturers allow, but to make it more affordable, I cover your shipping cost and I also pay your taxes for you too. Okay, so I'm trying to make these as low cost as possible. All right, so if you take a look in my infection section right here, this has all of the herbal products I've worked with before that treat various infections, okay? And here is the Sida acuta, here is the Hootenea. These are manufactured by a company called Montana Pharmacy. They're a quality product, I really trust it. They do a good job with that. And then in terms of the cinnamon clove oregano capsules, it's this product right here, the liposomal cinnamon, clove, and oregano capsules, okay? And I would do all three herbs, all right? And then finally, in terms of how quickly you'll see some response from this, usually within about 2 months to 3 months, if you're using an herbal medicine protocol that's working, you should start to see improvements. And that doesn't mean everything is going to be gone, but you should start to see improvements. And if not, it's time to look at doing a different protocol. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Lou. Let's see. Can having low white blood cells cause a false negative IgG immunoblot Lyme test? So Not necessarily. So white blood cells, everyone, can sometimes be low in chronic Lyme disease. That doesn't necessarily correspond with the ability of those white blood cells to make antibodies. You could have low numbers and still be making sufficient amount of antibodies to have a positive immunoblot test, okay? So what an immunoblot test is doing is looking at, are you making antibodies that attach to proteins found on the covering of the germ? So it's an antibody test, all right? So again, having low numbers of white blood cells in and of themselves does not mean you have low antibody production, okay? All right. Thanks, Lou. Hello, Angela. Do your patients usually have strep and Mycoplasma pneumonia with the Bartonella, like PANDAS? If so, is the treatment different then? So in terms, let me just make a comment. Mycoplasma pneumonia, there are different opinions about what to do with that. Okay, and I'm just going to give you mine real quick, and then I'll talk about the strep and the Bartonella and PANDAS. So Mycoplasma pneumonia is a common bacteria that lives even in healthy people, all right? And so the problem with that is if we were to pull healthy people off the street and measure antibody reactions for Mycoplasma, we would find in probably about 10% or so of healthy people that they have antibodies made against Mycoplasma, all right? So just finding antibodies against Mycoplasma does not mean it is causing your illness. I just want to be clear about that, okay? Now, fortunately, the treatments that we use for Bartonella are likely to take care of the Mycoplasma pneumonia. Okay, the agents that we use for that will take care of it. So even though I may disagree with my colleagues, I think we need to treat Mycoplasma, doesn't matter, because if you've got Bartonella and you're treating that, you're probably covered. The same things we use for that will likely work on the Mycoplasma as well too, okay? Now the strep, so there are two bacteria infections that have some evidence that they are involved in PANDAS, all right? One of those is Streptococcus and the other is Bartonella. So when treating, you can treat for Bartonella and strep at the same time, but the one thing that I like doing when I do that is one of the agents that I use to treat for Bartonella, I like it to be azithromycin, which is part of a Bartonella prescription treatment, and it happens to pick up the strep. Okay, so you can do it. It doesn't have to be different. You would just probably use azithromycin as one of your antibiotics that would handle the strep, and it would be part of a Bartonella treatment. And then other things you would want to combine that with what might be methylene blue is an option. You might want to look at combining it with rifampin, rifamycin is another option. You could even look at combining it with a tetracycline like doxycycline, minocycline. But you would combine it with something else for the Bartonella. But the azithromycin by itself would be useful against the strep. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Angela. Hi, Dr. Ross. Hope the shoulder is good. It's been a little testy here lately, but it's progressing. Thank you. For those of you that don't know, I had 2 huge bone spurs removed in my shoulder about 2 weeks ago, and they had to reattach one of my biceps tendons too. So they predicted my rehab was going to be about 3 to 4 months. I'm about 2 months in. And I thought I would have less pain by now than what I do, but they tell me it's okay. This is pretty standard. So I'm recovering. I'll put it that way. I'm not back riding my motorcycle yet, though. And that will be the milestone for me when I'm able to do that. But thank you for asking. I appreciate that. Does Azlocillin work well and can it be prescribed? Less side effects, I believe. Also, do you recommend an easy way to find effective Lyme doctor in San Diego area? So I can answer both those for you. So Azlocillin is an antibiotic that is FDA approved. Okay. Which is, and a number of years ago, there were studies done by Dr. Rahatis and his research group out of Stanford University. They were looking to see, they were testing like all FDA approved drugs, anything. It could even be an antidepressant medicine. And they were trying to see if they also happened to kill Lyme. All right. And they were looking to see if it would kill persister Lyme, so the hibernating forms of Lyme. And in their experiments, they found that Azlocillin did a good job. Okay. And it probably even handled the growing, I believe, the growing form of Borrelia too. So it looked good in the lab. All right. The problem is there have been no human studies completed showing efficacy in humans. Okay. And secondly, there's no pharmaceutical companies that manufacture it. All right. Now, there is a company called FlightPath that is developing therapeutics against infections like Lyme, and they hold the rights to the Azlocillin. They have decided not to develop it further because Azlocillin actually is a pretty broad spectrum antibiotic. And these days, the whole focus is to do antibiotic development on more focused antibiotics that only target one or two germs. So you don't destroy the gut microbiome as much, et cetera. So they are not developing it further because they don't think they're going to have a big enough market, basically. It comes down to finances, all right? So unfortunately, even though this is an FDA-approved drug, there are no manufacturers, and it does not look like we're going to have anyone manufacturing it anytime soon. It's just not, no one's pursuing the testing that would need to be done to see if this really is going to be something that works effectively in people. Okay. All right. And then in terms of San Diego, the Lyme doctor that I like to use in San Diego that I think has some similarity in how she works compared to myself is Dr. Nicola McFadzean Ducharme. So the last name is Ducharme. McFadzean. It's either MAC or MC FADZEAN. But Dr. Nicola has written books about managing Lyme disease. She's got a book about a general approach and also a book on nutritional approaches, and is a naturopathic doctor and is very thorough in what she does. So that is generally where I have referred my patients to when I stopped practicing. That's who I referred to. And also when people in California were looking for somebody to go to, that is who I would recommend as well too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Greg. Hello, Sally. Is it a good... Oh, we did that earlier. Oh, I see what you're trying to show me. So, Sally, you're bringing up that Dr. McDonald has found research showing there is a relationship that Lyme bacteria hides inside parasitic worms. I know Dr. McDonald's work has shown that. I just haven't seen any benefit in treating for those. I don't find it help. I think the thing we need to do is just put people on antibiotics that will go after the Lyme bacteria itself. So I understand your question a little bit better now, but I don't find benefit from it. And actually, I don't think most of my colleagues are not doing things to go after these parasites. It's not clear about the meaning of Dr. McDonald's work. I'll put it that way. Okay. Hello, Charles. See, there is a new lab, MyMyco Lab, that claims his tests are superior than the traditional urine mycotox tests. These tests are serum, blood tests, IgG and IgE for 12 mycotoxins. Is there any benefit or downside to using this test instead of the regular urine test? So I'm not going to take the time to do this right now, but I have looked into this lab before, and if I remember correctly, okay, and I hope you heard the if part, my understanding of the antibody testing was that it was not looking at antibodies against the toxin itself. This was a test to see if you had antibodies against the organism that makes the toxin, okay? And my comment would be, if that is still so, what they're offering, antibodies against the organisms, you could have picked that up just by having those organisms, those mold spores around you in the environment. But that does not mean that you're a person that has toxicity issues, all right? So the issue with mold, and you may know this, Charles, but the issue with mold isn't whether you're having an antibody reaction, it's whether you've acquired the toxins that they produce. So 25% of all people, when we breathe in mold toxins from our environment, these mold toxins get trapped inside of us, okay? And just seeing if you have antibodies against the mold spores in your environment does not mean that you have mold toxins trapped in you, all right? Now, I may be incorrect about that, but the last time I looked at this, that was my understanding of the MyMyco lab, is that it was not actually looking to see if you have antibodies against the toxins, but rather against the actual organisms. All right. Anyhow, I'll have to look at that further, but thank you for that question. Hello, Kate. Hi, Dr. Ross. I had Lyme in 2020 and recovered fairly easily, luckily, but I do have 2 pre-existing autoimmune illnesses, Hashimoto's and type 1 diabetes. So I went on low dose naltrexone for a little over a year, and it helped me to get over the last hump of healing. Oh, good. I ended up going off of it last year because I went to 4.5 milligrams, which was too much, and it caused a lot of cortisol hormonal issues, which I now know is because naltrexone is known to cause HPA dysfunction at its normal dose. Flash forward to now, I don't have any symptoms, and normal I'd say I'm good. And despite my CRP and SID rate being normal, my cytokine panel has been chronically elevated, which is concerning to me. I want to add something into my current regimen to help address this, but I'm unsure if I should go back to LDN at a lower dose or do something like a Meriva 500 or Cytoquel. But I'm also worried about curcumin, as I know it can deplete iron. Any help in deciding? First of all, I would say there's no science on this, okay? There's no science that tells me whether LDN in this situation or Meriva or Cytoquel would be better. There is none, okay? It is very possible that the LDN that you were using at a dose that did not cause the problem is your threshold, right? So it's the 4.5 milligram that caused the problem. So on the one hand, you could go back to a 3 milligram or 1.5 milligram dose, and you may still get your benefit. Regarding curcumin in the Meriva 500 and even curcumin in the Cytoquel, because Cytoquel has some curcumin in it too, I understand your concern about depleting iron. I've never seen it happen. So in theory, there is that concern, but it is something I haven't seen happen. If you're worried about it, periodically check your iron level. And do it like 3 months after you're on it, do it after 6 months, and do it after 9 months. And if your iron levels continue to look well, stop iron testing. All right. If you're looking to do this without having to pay for the prescription and be a little bit more in control of how you do this, the curcumin would be a better way of going, probably in the Meriva 500. But on the other hand, the LDN we know gave you benefit. So I don't know, you have to make a decision there, but I can tell you from scientifically, there isn't any science that says which one is a better way to go here. Okay. Good luck to you, Kate. Hello, Mary. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thank you for donating your time and expertise to help patients with tick-borne infection. You're welcome. My doctor says I'm allergic to everything. Is there something I can use to control inflammation? I'm allergic to curcumin, severe allergy to knotweed, allergic to resveratrol. NSAIDs cause bleeding ulcers. All right. So one thing you may want to consider trying, just see if you tolerate it. When people have a lot of allergies, what I often like using to control the allergic reaction as well as cytokines is the herb called quercetin. So quercetin is a bioflavonoid that comes from colorful fruits and vegetables, maybe even onions, I think, too. Anyhow, it can get inside of white blood cells and block enzymes that help produce cytokines. So that's how it blocks cytokine production. In addition, it stabilizes the covering of mast cells, which are your allergy cells, and it keeps them from releasing as much histamine, okay? A dose that I will use often is I'll try to get people on 500 milligrams 3 times a day. But if you are med reactive, you might want to start at 250 milligrams 1 time a day. Try it for a few days, see how you handle that. I rarely see people that have trouble with it, but it can happen sometimes, okay? So you might want to start that and see if you can get some help from that. The other thing you might want to look at trying is low-dose naltrexone that we were just talking about in the previous question. I rarely see people have autoimmune reactions or reactivity to the low-dose naltrexone. And low-dose naltrexone, so let me talk a little bit more about low-dose naltrexone. So naltrexone is a chemical that is a narcotic blocker, okay? And so it had previously been used mainly in addiction issues to help limit people that have addictions, all right? Our body's narcotic a type of narcotic receptor we have in our body are called endorphin receptors. And our bodies make endorphins. Endorphins are our natural pain control chemical. The endorphins that we make also regulate the immune system, okay? And so if you do a temporary blockade of the endorphin receptors with small amounts of naltrexone, what happens is while those endorphin receptors are blocked, the immune system reacts by trying to make more endorphins to kind of run around that blockade. But secondly, the endorphin receptors even get more sensitive to the endorphins that are there. So when the blockade wears away, you get a rush of extra endorphins on these receptors that are super sensitized. And that has the effect of regulating inflammation and the immune cells that make cytokines, okay? In addition, the mast cells that are in our body have a type of receptor on them called toll receptors. And the quercetin, or the LDN, is a toll receptor blocker. And when you block a toll receptor on the mast cells, that actually stabilizes them so they're not releasing as many of those histamines as well too, okay? So you might try that to see if you can calm down some of your inflammation and see if that can make it so you can step into the treatment then, okay? So let me show you my low-dose naltrexone article. I did earlier. So go back and look at that. So if you don't remember seeing that article earlier, go to my Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD site and just in the search box, write the letters LDN. You'll find my article and go through the in and outs of how to use that, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Mary. Oh, Mary, the other article you may want to take a look at. So when people have a lot of allergies, we also call that can mean that you have something called mast cell activation syndrome. And in mast cell activation syndrome, what are we doing here? Hold on a minute. In mast cell activation syndrome, what happens is your allergy cells, your mast cells, get turned on to be super reactive by having tick-borne infections, maybe yeast, and even mold toxicity. All of those can super turn on the mast cells, okay? And so you want to do things to stabilize those mast cells and to make it so they're not as reactive. And so there's an article I have called Mast Cell Activation Syndrome in Lyme. And I would look through this. There's some things, so to get it under control, ultimately, you want to treat your Lyme, your bacteria, try to get things that you're allergic to out of your system, and deal with, I list it all up here. All right, but go through this. You're going to see, I give you the steps to take, but one is decrease stress. This is what I was trying to get to. Stress is one of the biggest stimulators of your mast cells. And if you can de-stress, whatever that is, whether it means deep breathing, meditating, looking at the work that you do, etc., it helps to decrease the stress, okay? Number 2, remove the things you know you're allergic to. Number 3, treat your infections. Number 4, get toxins out that may be stimulating those mast cells. Number 5, lower cytokines. And in here I said curcumin, but again, you can't do that. So the quercetin that I mentioned earlier can do that. There's some there's prescription and over-the-counter medicines you can use that will block, that are antihistamines, if you will. And then you want to stabilize your mast cells with quercetin. And I wrote it right there for you. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Mary. Hello, Katie. Hello, Dr. Ross. My question is about the safety of methylene blue. I'm dealing with treatment-resistant Lyme and Barton. My LMD seems to feel that methylene blue is necessary about my concern about its carcinogenicity. So as I've looked at the carcinogenicity, the cancer-causing potential, I think it's extremely remote. And first of all, you're going to be probably using the methylene blue shorter term, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Okay, I call that shorter term. Okay. Secondly, the doses that are used in the studies that show that it can lead to cancer are usually magnificently higher doses by comparison to what you're going to be using. And so I've looked at it. I just don't think there's enough data there to say that this is a problem. Okay. All right. Anyhow, that's my take on it. All right. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Kate. Kate says, do you think there's any issue with LDN long term? No, I haven't seen it. Obviously, from the question earlier, at a higher dose, I think it was you that wrote that you ran into some question with dysfunction of your hypothalamus pituitary, but I haven't seen long-term problems. I've had people on it for years without having difficulty. Okay. Thanks for your question. Good question. Hello, Sandy. Let's see. What SNP indicates a person cannot detox mold? Thank you for these webinars. So the testing that is done to see if you have a genetic predisposition, and I use the word predisposition, to see if you have a genetic profile that may make it so that you're not able to remove mold toxins, is a type of test called an HLA-DR test. Okay. And if you're looking at how you interpret those, just Google HLA-DR, Dr. Richie Shoemaker. That's Ritchie, and then Shoemaker, Shoemaker. So he's the one that came up with which defects in an HLA-DR are consistent with people having mold detox issues. Okay. Now, what I will tell you is I used to do that test, and I sometimes found that there were people that had mold toxicity that didn't have anything wrong on that test. All right. So I don't think that test is uniformly accurate. Also, having a genetic predisposition, having a blueprint that says that you may have a mold detox problem does not mean you develop the mold detox problem. Okay. Because keep in mind, with the blueprint has, between the blueprint and developing mold toxicity is a lot of chemical reactions that may be affected by the gut microbiome, for instance, or the environment around us. So there's all kinds of things that can change how the interpretation of the blueprint is actually manifested. And so my problem with Dr. Shoemaker's HLA-DR test is that, in my experience, it misses people that have mold toxicity. And if you rely on it primarily alone, it may overestimate who has mold toxicity issues. My preference is to actually see if you have excess mold toxins in you. And the way to do that is the urine mycotoxin testing. Okay. All right. Thanks for our question. Hi, Kate. Let's see. Is it significant that my Epstein-Barr virus IgG it used to be 100, now it's 600? Thanks. So again, this is where I somewhat disagree with a number of my colleagues. All right. So I mentioned earlier that Mycoplasma is a common infection that can be found in healthy people. A chlamydia pneumonia is another one. Epstein-Barr virus, human herpes virus type 6, cytomegalovirus. These are all organisms, germs, that you could pull 100 healthy people off the street and probably find laboratory evidence in about 10 to 20% of those people that they have one or all of these infections. And these are healthy people. Okay, they're healthy. They're healthy, all right? So just having an immune reaction does not prove that you have a disease from that infection living in you, because our immune systems can work to keep these organisms under control. There are no decent studies that have been done that prove that high levels, very high levels of antibodies mean that you have excess virus load in you or excess bacterial load in you in the case of Mycoplasma, okay? And so we don't really have a useful way at this time of accurately diagnosing quantities of viruses or Mycoplasma pneumonia in you to let us know if your immune system lost the battle. All right, we just don't. In terms of having elevated antibodies at 600, it just may mean your immune system is doing a great job. It's just, it's out there keeping those germs under control. Okay, it could mean that. All right, thanks for the question. So Kate, I'm going to do a screen share so you can read a little bit more about my opinion on this, the Mycoplasma, the viruses, the titers, and what they mean or don't mean. Let me go ahead and do a screen share here. So take a look in my infection treatment plans. I think it's going to be in here. Hold on a minute. Yeah, here we go. So I have an article that I wrote called Target Viruses, Mycoplasma, and Chlamydia and Lyme. Maybe not. And in this article, I discuss that relying on antibodies is not truly going to tell you whether you have activated viruses or Mycoplasma or not. And that we really don't have a reliable way of telling that at this time. Okay. All right. read that article, you get more of my opinion on it. Thanks, Kate. Kate says, thanks so much for your help always. I mean that wholeheartedly. I value your opinion more than anyone's. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hello, Kathleen. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Hold on here just a minute. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Are there tests that can differentiate whether the pain is from gout or psoriatic arthritis versus Lyme? I've been having a lot of joint pain with swelling that's in one location, foot or leg, for a while, then a different location for a while, plus 6 millimeter kidney stone with no hydronephrosis, and a small itchy patch of red skin on my neck that was diagnosed as seborrheic dermatitis. I've been to a number of doctors about the pain, and they can't seem to agree. One suspects gout and another suspects psoriatic arthritis. Optional, skip next part of too much. Some of the tests I've had, uric acid 4.7, leukocyte. Okay. All right. Let me just, so it's a tricky to try to differentiate, but I'll say one thing that stood out to me. So the nature of Lyme and of Borrelia infection is to have wandering pains. All right. So you may be familiar with Dr. Richard Horowitz and his DAPSOM protocols and his MSIDS questionnaire to see if you might have chronic Lyme. His MSIDS questionnaire, one of the things that he did was to try to validate it to see if there were certain yes answers to some of his questions that would be more valid at indicating if you had Lyme or not. Okay. And what he was able to show through his study is that people that had wandering pain or wandering neuropathy, the quality of wandering was consistent with Lyme disease. It is as accurate as finding Lyme as getting a positive Lyme test. Okay. So the fact that these are wandering pains and wandering swellings that you're having is usually not consistent with what you would see in psoriasis or even in gout. Okay. And so it would lean me towards this being more due to Borrelia. Okay. All right. Thanks, Kathleen. Good luck to you. Let's see. Hi, Tim. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. How are you doing? I'm doing well. Thank you. Let's see. I was wondering whether Primaquine or Coartem is easier to tolerate. I was looking at some of the side effects of Coartem, and it says some of them happen in 30% of people that take it. It just seems like a lot. Also, is Primaquine with Cryptolepis a valid babesia protocol? I'm asking because I can't take hydroxychloroquine or atovaquone. Thank you so much. Interesting. So I tend to find in my practice, I have seen that more people have side effect problems with the Coartem than the Primaquine. Okay, to answer that part of the question. Coartem, I tend not to find to be as active and effective as an antimalarial that treats babesia as Primaquine is. I think Primaquine is stronger. All right. Now, ideally, I like to pair Primaquine with another drug. I ideally like to either do it with a hydroxychloroquine, which you can't tolerate, or an atovaquone, which you can't tolerate. Okay. But, and so I have never paired it with Cryptolepis to know would it work. So I just don't have the experience doing that. But I would see no problem in giving that protocol a try and seeing it. All right. So yeah, it'd be interesting if you do try that. Give us some follow up at some point in the future so you can let us know what happened. Okay, but yeah, I could see myself recommending that to somebody in your situation. Okay, all right. Good luck to you, Tim. Hello, Debbie. Let's see. I've been treated with antibiotics several times, each time successfully until I relapsed again. I recently decided to try herbal antibiotics, started with cat's claw and Atoba, and got up to 9 drops of each 2 times a day. The last couple of days noticed extreme dry mouth and thirst. When I looked up the herbs for more information and saw that cat's claw is a diuretic. Is it possible that cat claw is causing the symptoms? If so, should I just drink a lot more water and keep increasing the dose as planned? Or should I stop the cat's claw? Would Atoba bark and Japanese knotweed be an effective combination if I can't take the cat's claw? Or is it possible that it's alcohol in the tinctures that is causing the thirst and dry mouth? I'm just guessing here. Also, should I use transfer factors from the start? Which one do you recommend? I also have had Babesia and Bartonella and apparently reactivated viruses, including Epstein-Barr. All right. So, you know what I would do in a situation like this? I would continue the Atoba and stop the cat's claw and see if that's the culprit. Okay. In other words, if you stop the cat's claw and the dry mouth goes away, then it's probably due to some side effect of the cat's claw. And then I wouldn't resume it. I think a good treatment that you could pair the Atoba with, you could either pair it with Japanese knotweed, as you're suggesting here. The Atoba's got science behind it that shows it's good for growing Lyme. It doesn't really have any science that shows it's persisters. At least I don't think it does. Japanese knotweed, on the other hand, has good science showing it will deal with both growing and persister. And so you add coverage by having the knotweed paired with the Atoba for the persisters as well too. If that is not tolerable for you, you could even look at doing an Atoba cryptolepis. Cryptolepis, which is anti-Babesia, also based on studies a few years ago, on lab experiments that is, we saw that it can treat both growing and persister forms of Borrelia as well too. Okay, so you could any of those you could do. Okay, and then in terms of the transfer factors. I don't know that you necessarily need to use them as you're killing germs, but clearly you have a problem with relapsing, which means that you may be one of the people that we're just not able to get every germ out, okay? What you might want to consider doing after you get well this time as a means of preventing further relapses is to begin a transfer factor at that time, and that transfer factor is called transfer factor L+. Everyone, transfer factors are substances that target the immune system to attack certain germs, okay? And Research Nutritionals makes a transfer factor product called transfer factor L+, and in it, it has transfer factors against Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia. It's either Chlamydia or Mycoplasma pneumonia. I'll show you. We'll go look at it here in a minute. I believe there's even HHV6 in there as well too, Ehrlichia anaplasma. So it's a good tick-borne infection and possibly more, but it's the most targeted product we have. And so it can kind of help target the immune system so it can kind of keep fighting these germs if they were to come back after you stop treatment. Okay, so that part of your relapse protocol could be to take a transfer factor L+, 1 pill twice a day. The other thing I do for my patients that would tend to get into relapses like this is when we're done treating, I might leave them on herbal antibiotics at lower doses to help swat things down as they start to pop back up. So, for instance, I might use an Atoba and a Japanese knotweed instead of 30 drops twice a day that I would do at a full treatment. I might use them at 15 drops 1 time a day. All right. So I leave them on something to help kind of scan the environment to kind of keep those germs under control. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Debbie. And thanks for the question. All right, let's see here. Hello, Doug. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have Lyme, Bart, and Mold Toxicity. My regimen includes GI detox, minocycline, rifampin, and tinidazole. I know I need to add agents for persisters, and I'm considering Japanese knotweed and cryptolepis. My functional medicine docs wants me to avoid oregano oil due to its harshness to the gut, which I spent months getting into good shape. However, I can't get to persister remedies until I'm more stable. I'm finding it difficult to tolerate tinidazole, even though I take it for only 1 week every month. My doctor says tinidazole or Banderol are effective against the L form of Lyme. So could I try switching to Banderol? What do you think? Thanks. All right. So the tinidazole, the reason I use it in my treatments for Borrelia is that it treats the cyst form as well as it may treat the L form. Well, let's get into terminology here. So L form has different meanings. So you can find, so the way that I define, okay, so in Lyme, there are 3 forms. And the 3 forms are spirochete, that's the corkscrew looking thing. L form means the form of Lyme that moves inside of cells, or that's called intracellular Lyme, okay? And then there's a cyst form, all right? Some doctors call the cyst the L form. So when you talk about L form here, I'm not sure whether you're talking about cyst, what I would call cyst, or what I call L form. Okay, so you can find it written about both ways in the literature. It gets very confusing, all right? But anyhow, if you're using L form here to mean the cyst, tinidazole would pick up that cyst, all right? Banderol should pick up that cyst as well, too. And we know that from experiments that were done by Eva Shoppe and her research group in New Haven, gosh, maybe about 15 years ago now. They looked at studies looking at the effectiveness of cat's claw and Banderol against spirochete and cyst Lyme, and also against biofilm. And in their experiments, the Banderol did break apart the cyst. Okay, all right. So yeah, you could use that instead of tinidazole for what I call cyst Lyme. I think your doctor, when you write L form here, I think you mean cyst. Okay, all right. And then in terms of looking at what you could use for persisters here, you know, pick either the knotweed or pick the cryptolepis. You don't need to do both. Just pick one of them. Either one of those will go after growing and persister Bartonella and growing and persister Borrelia. All right. Now, the cryptolepis is a little bit harder to stomach. And so if you've had stomach issues, you might want to lean more towards the Japanese knotweed. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Doug. Hello, Tad. Let's see. Do you have any experience treating severe hyperacusis that causes pain that begets pain? I have had it for over 10 years, and it has gotten very debilitating. Have you seen improvement, and by what protocol? Mine was brought on by sound trauma, but I'm wondering if there may be an infection that is compounding it. Doxy and Minnow have given temporary relief, but so have many other things I've tried that have anti-inflammatory properties. Similarly, Buner herbs help for a few days after finally hitting max doses, but then reverted with no improvement over the next 6 months. What would you recommend in terms of providing diagnosis of potential treatment? So first of all, I would have a good ear doctor take a look at you. You probably have already done that, but I'm just going to state the obvious. Somebody needs to do some hearing tests on you. Now, if they find that it is an overreactive nerve, like your nerve is super sensitive, that from nerve injury, then you might want to start looking at things that will quiet that agitated nerve. So acupuncture can sometimes help with situations like that. Sometimes being on anti-seizure medicines or low doses of antidepressant medicines can quiet the agitated nerves. And you might want to start doing nerve repair if that is what they determine the cause to be, okay? And things you can do that help with nerve repair is a peptide called BPC 157, and that would be to use it 1 pill twice a day. The other thing that can help with nerve repair is to also do what is known as phospholipid therapy, and which is to repair the nerve cell membrane and the mitochondria, the energy factories that are inside of the nerves. And so the product I like using for that is something called ATP 360, and that's 1 pill twice a day. Okay, so if it is a nerve injury issue, repair the nerve and quiet the agitation of that nerve. And you may not like the idea of doing prescriptive medicines, but sometimes the anti-seizure medicines or the antidepressant medicines can help with that. Okay. If it is a nerve, an eardrum issue, I don't have a solution for you, unfortunately. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Ted. Hi, Joe. See, hi, Dr. Ross. How do I differentiate between, oh, we already answered that earlier. Hello, Katie. Since I've already done 9 months of disulfiram, methylene blue, and 2 other antibiotics, does it make sense that my LMD wants to try another round of methylene blue? Is there any other drug that acts in the same way as methylene blue does? I guess I would need to know more about your symptoms and what's happening to give you a solid response here, okay? But first of all, the disulfiram, just so you know, the disulfiram was the glory drug, the wonder drug we were all rushing to about 3 or 4 years ago now. I think a lot of us have become more disenfranchised with it. I think that we now know that it does nothing for Bartonella. It may have a weak effect against Babesia, and there is a question now as to whether it actually is beneficial for Borrelia. All right. And so I was actually at the last ILAS meeting a month ago, and there's animal studies showing now, and they finally have animal studies for Borrelia showing that there is no change in the growth of Borrelia by using disulfiram. All right. So it may or may not be a beneficial drug for Borrelia. The one thing that it might be useful for in Borrelia at least is maybe breaking up some of the biofilms. There's a lot of risk in using disulfiram though, and that some people get into permanent nerve damage from it too. So I generally shy away from using it these days. The methylene blue is useful is useful for treating persister Bartonella and Borrelia. It has lab evidence that it will treat growing Bartonella, and knowing the mechanism by which it works, I believe it treats growing Borrelia. Okay, so lab evidence says for Bartonella it treats growing and persisters. For Lyme, lab evidence says it treats persisters, and I'm saying I think it probably treats growing Lyme as well too. All right. The other advantages of using methylene blue is it breaks up biofilms. If you are a person that has a lot of cognitive issues, it may help with the cognitive issues in a couple ways. Number one, it provides a patch to mitochondria that are not adequately making ATP, the energy source that they're supposed to make for your cells. And so you get better functioning mitochondria energy factories in your cells, which means your immune cells work better, which means your brain works better and you think better. Okay, so we know about that from the world of Alzheimer's, where there's some good research showing that methylene blue can help improve thinking in people with Alzheimer's, primarily through improvements in mitochondria function. In addition, from the world of Alzheimer's, we know that methylene blue also has a benefit in that it blocks an enzyme that destroys a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. All right. And acetylcholine is one of the neurotransmitters involved in thinking. So the other advantage of methylene blue is you get some improvement in thinking. You get improvement in mitochondria function, which helps energy and thinking as well. You may get some destruction of biofilm, and then you get some good germ killing. Does it make sense to use it again? Yeah, I have no problem with people going back and using it, especially if there was benefit at some other time of using it. Okay, all right. So if you want more information about methylene blue, I don't know if you saw, but I released an article earlier this week about it. Let me just do a quick screen share here for you. All right, so I rewrote my methylene blue article to fill in more of the things that it does. And so this is it. I call it Mighty Methylene Blue for Tick-borne infections. The other thing it can help with is depression, actually. So in here, I list the various things that it can do. It can kill Bartonella and Borrelia, improves fatigue and mitochondria function, fixes brain function and brain fog, lifts depression, and can treat a condition called methemoglobinemia. All right. So anyhow, take a look at that. You'll get some up-to-date information about methylene blue. All right. All right. Thank you for that question. Hello, Ted. Let's see. Does T-cell testing, in addition to immunoblot, give us any helpful information that could be missed by the immunoblot? All right. So immunoblot testing is a way to see if your body is making antibodies that attack a germ. Once you make antibodies, there is a good chance your body will always keep making antibodies. And so the trouble with doing antibody testing at some point is that, or down the road, is finding antibodies does not mean that the germ is still active and in you. All right. The other thing is antibodies sometimes just stop being made at times for no reason at all. So, and the lack of antibodies does not prove an infection is not in you. All right. Okay. All right. Now, T-cell testing is also called ELISpot testing. And what we're doing with T-cell testing is we're seeing if your T-cells that actually attack germs, they're a type of white blood cell that attack germs, we're seeing if they have recently attacked these infections. Okay, so we can do T-cell testing for Lyme, for Bartonella, etc. And what we're doing, the way the test is done is we take T-cells, put them in a test tube from you, and then we introduce into that test tube proteins from the germ we're trying to see if you might have reacted against. And then we measure, do the T-cells release cytokines? So it's a T-cell reaction test, okay? Now, the T-cell reaction test, unfortunately, are more limited at being able to diagnose than the immunoblots from IGeneX, all right? So the immunoblots from IGeneX for the Borrelia, they look to see if you have antibodies against 8 strains. For Bartonella, they look to see if you have antibodies against the whole family of Bartonella, which includes 15 strains that can infect us. And for Babesia, they look to see if you have antibodies against the whole family of Babesia, which again can include 15 to 20 strains, okay? By comparison, the ELISpot tests that are being done out there by Armin and InfectoLab are much more limited. They're only looking on InfectoLab, they're looking to see if you have reaction against only one strain of Borrelia, against only one strain of Bartonella, and against only one strain of Babesia. Armin, on the other hand, looks to see if you have reaction against 3 strains of Borrelia. So 2 of those are known as European strains, 1 strain of Bartonella, and 1 strain of Babesia. Okay, so in other words, The immunoblot, as it's currently practiced, looks to see if you have a reaction against more things. And that's what makes it a more sensitive test, okay? Now, it is possible that you could have immune suppression that is so low that your immune system does not make antibodies, but could still make T cells, and you get a positive T cell reaction test. So I will sometimes, when I've got a negative immunoblot, but I need to get a lab test for whatever reason. Sometimes patients, you can diagnose these disorders if you have to without positive testing based on clinical symptoms. But some people, for various reasons, we need to get a positive test. If I've got a negative immunoblot and we need to do further testing to just look a little bit further, I will do ELISpot testing. But I recognize the deficiencies in it, that it may miss a large number of things that are out there. Okay. All right. So, yeah, that might be when to do it. But realize if you do it, you're just not testing for as many things. Okay. Thanks for that question, Ted. Let's see. Ted says, do you suggest not starting any nerve repair protocol until after treatment and infections has stopped? If symptoms linger, how can one tell if it's caused by active infection or post-treatment nerve damage? How common or frequently do people successfully have from tick-borne related nerve damage? I actually will treat infections and start doing nerve repair at the same time. I have no problem doing that. I understand your questions you raised here, but I'll move forward with doing both. All right. Good luck to you. And yes, you can successfully heal from tick-borne infections and recover your neurologic function. Okay. Bear with me here. There's two ways that you can post questions. There's this one that's called the Q&A only, and another one that's called chat function. And I'm now have moved over to doing the Q&A only, and a lot of these are questions that were already written on the chat function part too. So bear with me as I'm just cleaning those out. Yeah, a lot of these I already answered. Let's see here. Hello, Barbara. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks again. You're welcome. Another question. My last blood work showed that IgG for EBV was very high, again, year after year after year. Outside of lysine, not really sure what to do. And each doctor says this is complicating my long-term Lyme treatment. But again, since it's shown up for years, crazy high over ranges, don't know what to do, if anything. Okay. So as I noted earlier, I don't usually treat for chronic viruses unless if somebody we've been treating Lyme for a year or more, and somebody is still remaining very symptomatic with their high cytokine symptoms. And high cytokine, the immune system in responding to Lyme makes too many cytokines. It's too many cytokines that give you most of your Lyme symptoms. Same thing, if your chronic viruses have in fact gotten active, it's going to trigger the immune system to make too many cytokines. So Lyme, chronic viruses may look alike. As I noted earlier, I don't think we have an accurate way of saying whether your viruses have gotten active. We just don't, okay? My approach, and the reason I don't test for viruses right away, is that even if they are there, it is my understanding from what I've seen, if you can get Lyme and tick-borne infections under better control, the immune system often will turn on enough to be able to start putting the viruses back under control if they had gotten overactive, okay? So I let that whole thing play out for about a year or so. I'll start treating for Lyme and infections. I acknowledge that maybe viruses could be overactive, even though I don't think testing is valid. But I also acknowledge that if we can get those germs under control, the tick-borne infections, often the immune system will do its job and put those viruses under control if they got overactive, okay? But now fast forward to about a year or more into treatment, somebody's not getting all the way well. It raises the possibility that maybe their viruses are active. Maybe there is another source triggering excess cytokines, okay? So my approach then would be to treat for chronic viruses and give it a 6-month try. And what I like using to do that is olive leaf extract, which is an herb that has great antiviral potential. I like to have people work up to 1,500 milligrams 3 times a day, so pretty high doses, okay? I like to have people take a transfer factor called transfer factor plasmic that has transfer factors in it that target chronic virus infections. And I have them do that 2 pills 1 time a day. And I also like people to take a mushroom called reishi mushrooms that is useful at turning on the antiviral part of the immune system. And that I would use as 400 milligrams 3 times a day. Okay. All right. But you need to give that about a 6-month try to see if it will make a difference. And again, it's more of a difference of how you feel, because again, I don't think that the virus testing is reliable. Okay. All right. Let me show you an article where you can look at how to do this. Beware, if you go up, don't jump right to 1,500 milligrams 3 times a day in the olive leaf. It's going to give you a pretty good herx. Okay. So let me just show you here. All right, so take a look in the infection treatment plan section. I have one on viruses. There it is. So it's when and how to treat chronic viruses in Lyme. And I walk through here olive leaf extract, the reishi mushrooms, and this transfer factor plasmic. Monolaurin's another option. I tend to like using olive leaf instead. This thymic protein A is no longer manufactured, unfortunately. All right. All right. While I'm here, I just want to show you all something. So I know a lot of you are finding benefit in participating in my free weekly webinars. If you like what I'm doing here, you can get more of this by participating in my online Lyme community. It's called Lyme United. And at Lyme United, this is a community made up of people living with Lyme where we work together to solve issues, okay? So I have a few forums in here that are useful. One is one called Member to Member, where people with Lyme write to each other and try to problem solve. I look into those conversations, just make sure that what they're talking about is safe. So I provide a safety backdrop, okay? And then there's 2 forums in here that you can interact with me. One is called Office Hours with Marty Ross MD. And this is a forum where you write questions to me and I respond 1 hour a day to all questions that have come in. And so it's daily responses to your questions on Monday to Friday, okay? And then I have another live webinar like this, except there's a twist. In my live webinars, I do it as a Zoom room. So I actually get to talk directly to people that are asking the questions. And usually we do in-depth case discussions of 2 people a week and then about 30 minutes of open questions from anyone. And it creates a nice interaction, okay? And then we also have our members now are starting to host their own events as well, too. So I encourage you to take a look at Lyme United. If you we need more members. I need more members to keep the group vital and alive. We've got good members, but I would like to have more. So if you'd like to sign up or learn more about Lyme United, over at Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD, click on my Lyme United tab here. I have a good description of what we're doing here, so you can look, and we even got testimonials going on here. But I think you'll find this helpful, and I'd like to invite you to join us. So I hope you'll consider that. Okay. All right. And with that, let me see here. I'll go back here. With that, that's the end of our webinar tonight. So it's 7:30 my time here, and I've got to get on to taking care of my Basenjis and taking care of myself. So tomorrow morning, so anyhow, I've enjoyed being with you all here tonight, and I hope you all got some useful information. At this point, tomorrow morning, keep your eye out on your email. I have to create the next series of webinars that will begin in December. And I'm trying to decide if we're going to have one next Thursday or not. And the issue is I was supposed to be gone. I was supposed to be participating as an expert witness in a court case, but that got canceled today. So I'm free all of a sudden, but I wasn't planning on hosting it next week. And now I need to figure out if I'm still going to have it or not. So anyhow, I'll solve that by tomorrow morning, but tomorrow morning, you'll have a link to sign up for the next webinar, which will either be next week or the week after. Okay. And then keep your eye out in the email too, you'll be able to sign up for the next webinar, and you'll also be able to look at the recording. Okay. And see the synopsis of what we talked about here. So, great being with you all here tonight, and I look forward to more in the future. All right. Good night, everyone.